look at the Denver Nuggets and say, whoa, just a week ago, they were that minus 115 or so price. Now we're looking at them at a 7-1 price. Any chances the Nuggets can actually come back?
I think this is going 6 or 7 games, so I think that could be a little bit of a tighter spread between those two. But when you got those two guys, those two monsters, and Towns and Edwards, it's just really hard.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
The Cam Rising stuff last year with Utah, 3 months of pretending he was questionable with a torn ACL, ridiculous.
It's a lot of gray right now when it comes to this stuff, and we really are. When people say we're in like the second or third inning of sports betting, that's why I agree, because there's so many of those situations that are very, very difficult to explain to a novice.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Game Time had 35 in the first half, Cam. And then, of course, he did not have another point the rest of the game.
Lillard's, it's playoff game time. This guy will show up. He will hit shots. Indiana, you better respond here, because I'll tell you, that's a bad, bad, bad loss. We were wrong, Carver. Like, hey, I admit, I was on the Pelicans. This game, I lost.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on Sport.
Good morning. Welcome to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Craig Mish with you with a great edition of the program today. Exciting stuff to deliver. We're going to tell you all about it. In fact, we're going to preview tonight's games in the National Basketball Association. Naturally, the NHL is back as well. Major League Baseball going on this afternoon. And, of course, our friend Simon Applebaum is in the house. For those of you who caught the Kentucky Derby or maybe the streaming event that featured Tom Brady and the roast, Simon is going to tell us the results of all of that as well. Of course, we have the SportsGrid 60, SportsGrid Sound Off, and everything that you can expect here on NewsWire on the show today. Thanks for tuning in. Let's begin with an uneventful night. Sorry to say, just got to keep it real. Uneventful night in the NBA last night. I mean, 2 blowouts. It happens. Sometimes you're going to get that. And hopefully tonight's Knicks-Pacers game is a little bit better. Oklahoma City defeats Dallas. Game wasn't close. 117-95 last night. OKC was up throughout. In fact, they were up pretty big at halftime as well. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, 29 points, 9 rebounds, 9 assists. Just not a great night for Luka. Didn't even get 20 points last night. Of course, OKC covers the number of 3.5. The total was 218 in this one. And Dallas is probably going to have to look a lot better in Game 2 than they looked in Game 1. My gosh, what happened last night in Oklahoma City? Well, that was asked of course, point guard Kyrie Irving, and exactly what it's like trying to defend SGA.
I mean, again, I'm going to show my respect to Shai first, and he's a great player. But tonight, in the first half, there wasn't really a rhythm for a lot of players out there. It was a lot of slow down, watch free throws be taken, and adjust to the way the game was being called. It felt like the game was being called like a regular season game tonight. That's just my perspective. I don't speak for anybody else. I don't want to get anybody else in trouble. That's just my perspective. I think that it was ref like a regular season game, because we come off a very physical series against the LA Clippers, and then we have some of these fouls that are called, and some of them may be fouls, right, or a majority of them. But I think when you're out there as a competitor and you just want the flow of the game to feel like the playoffs and the physicality is up there, it just feels a lot better. But again, it's all about adjustments. It's really just about continuing to stay positive through some of the runs that they make, and also being mature about who we're going against. They're a good team. They've shown it all year. They have a starting 5 that has a plus-minus through the roof. One of the top defenses. So, again, we're going to give them credit, but we got to come in Game 2 ready and prepared.
Dallas obviously has to look a lot better in Game 2 against Oklahoma City, as they have the night off tonight. Well, the Cleveland Cavaliers needed 7 games to defeat the Orlando Magic, and boy, that is what showed last night. Tired team, as the Boston Celtics basically ran them out on offense. They scored 120 points last night on Cleveland. The final 120-95, an easy cover. The line even crept up to 12.5 over on the FanDuel Sportsbook, but there was no stopping Jaylen Brown. One of the big surprises over the last couple of weeks of the playoffs has been Derek White. He had another 25 points yesterday. Jason Tatum with a double-double. 18 points, 11 rebounds, 5 assists. But yes, it was Jaylen Brown taking over the game many times throughout to get to that 120-point mark. Joe Mazzulla talked about how he is evolved as a star player in the league.
He takes a ton of pride in just growing as a player every year, every game, every day. Spends a lot of time on it. He's not afraid to go after something that he knows he can improve on, which I think is huge for his growth mindset. And like you said, he has evolved. His ability to pick and choose his spots, when to play in transition. He had a couple times where he scored in transition, and 2 plays later he slowed it down, went mid-pick and roll, and made the right play. I think the growth of him, even if he scores 6 or 8 in a row and he gets into the paint, it's a pass on the next one. So, he's grown as a player, and it's helped us, and, he's playing big stretches for us, so it's important.
Similar line for Game 2 with Boston 12.5, 13-point favorites over Cleveland coming up later this week. Now, also later this week, we're going to finally get to Game 3 of Denver and Minnesota. The good news for the Nuggets, even though they're down 0-2 going to Minnesota, is Jamal Murray will be able to play in the game. He was not issued a suspension, but was fined $100,000 for tossing a heating pad in the direction of an official during the loss to the Timberwolves. It happened with 4 minutes and 41 seconds in the second quarter, and naturally, this is not something that you can do and generally avoid a fine, so he got fined $100,000, and by the way, he's been really, really rough. Game 2, 8 points, 3 for 18 shooting. I guess if I was in his spot, I would throw something too. Just not at the referees, no doubt. All right, bad news for the Knicks. Mitchell Robinson going to miss the rest of the playoffs. He's been ruled out 6 to 8 weeks with a stress injury to his left ankle. Imaging confirmed the injury after playing just 12 minutes in Game 1 against the Indiana Pacers. He's had this issue before in December with the Knicks hosting the Pacers tonight. No Mitchell Robinson for now. I would guess for the next round, and who knows, as the NBA Finals, if they were to get that far, would happen in June. Meanwhile, a Defensive Player of the Year award for the new Papa, Rudy Gobert. He wins it again. His 4th Defensive Player of the Year award, tying an NBA record. He won in 2018, 2019, and 2021 with the Utah Jazz, and now joins Hall of Fame centers Dikembe Mutombo and Ben Wallace as the only 4-time winners. Victor Wembanyama, who was the Rookie of the Year, finished second in the voting to Rudy Gobert. Also, congratulations to Candace Parker, recently retired from the WNBA. She's been named the new president of Adidas Women's Basketball 10 days after announcing her retirement. She was the first woman to receive a signature shoe with Adidas back in 2010. All right, for the first time ever, a betting company is a key sponsor for one of the majors in golf, and this one is the upcoming PGA Championship. They have inked a deal with ESPN Bet. They've been officially named a sponsor. The partnership is throughout 2026. It's the PGA of America and, of course, Penn Entertainment. Under the agreement, ESPN Bet is now the official sports betting sponsor of the championship through 2026. In addition, late word this morning, Ryan Garcia's win over Devin Haney was met with a lot of skepticism once he tested positive for a PED. But on Wednesday, veteran boxing reporter Dan Rafael reported this morning he has been cleared of a potential positive drug test for a metabolite which derives from a banned substance called nandrolone. Never heard of any of this stuff, but naturally those test results have confirmed to be negative. So it looks like Garcia will end up keeping his victory. In Major League Baseball, one of the hottest teams going right now has got to be the Philadelphia Phillies. Speaking of new dads, Bryce Harper had a baby less than a week ago. What has he done? He's hit a home run in every game since. 3 games in a row. The Phillies have the best record in baseball. He had a grand slam, and the Phillies have won 7 straight games. The Blue Jays are falling apart completely, and the Phillies are headed the other way. Meanwhile, Wilson Contreras last night, in case you missed this, was behind home plate. JD Martinez was swinging the bat. His backswing cracked Wilson Contreras in the left arm, and my goodness, they reported this morning that it is fractured. He's going to miss months of time. He was placed on the injured list today, arguably the best hitter on the Cardinals this season. Gavin Lux is back with the Los Angeles Dodgers, of course, after missing all of last season. He hit a home run for the first time since 2022. Last night off the Miami Marlins starter Edward Cabrera, as the Dodgers have taken the first 2 games of the series. They'll play the 3rd game today 4 early afternoon baseball games today, including Angels and Pirates. They start at 12:30 Eastern after our show. Blue Jays and Phillies, 1 o'clock Eastern. Tigers, Guardians at 1, and Mets, Cardinals at 1:15 Eastern. The schedules for the National Football League's upcoming season in 2024 going to be released next week. The date that we're looking at is May 15th. We'll cover it for you next week here on the show. More trouble for Rashee Rice. He's now a suspect in an alleged assault that injured a man in a Dallas nightclub earlier this week. Of course, he was in an accident in Dallas as well with a speeding or driving issue. Rice has had all kinds of offseason issues, unfortunately for him, and could potentially be already looking at a suspension before this alleged incident. Tyler Boyd, former wide receiver of the Cincinnati Bengals, has a new home. He's signed with the Tennessee Titans. It's a 1-year deal, $4.5 billion. National Hockey League held its lottery last night. Congrats to the San Jose Sharks. They own the number 1 pick in the upcoming NHL draft. That will do it for us for now. But after this quick timeout, we'll be back with a whole lot more, previewing the National Basketball Association games tonight.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Drysdale could easily, at plus money, get the first goal, the second goal, the fourth goal. There's a few guys here. Maybe the prop betting market is not a bad way to look here.
Clippers over the Mavericks. If I would have told you that score before the game, knowing that Kawhi Leonard wasn't playing, I would have really figured it would have been the other way around. But the NBA is just crazy.
In-game live, all access, only on SportsGrid.
A surprise winner on the PGA Tour. Taylor Pendrith ends up winning his first PGA Tour win.
He was pretty darn lucky to win. Ben Poles should have won that tournament, also seeking his first PGA Tour victory. He went into the 18th hole, the easiest hole on the golf course, with a one-shot lead, and he was there in 2, just less than 30 feet from the cup.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
I just don't want to play for clicks. I want to be involved with a great leading program that's going to develop players. Him leaving Colorado, a shot across the bow at Dion. I don't think Dion cares.
Saw Logan Diggs move on from LSU to Ole Miss with Lane Kiffin. Don't be shocked if you see John Emery potentially maybe at another school, maybe like a Miss State or even maybe like a Texas A&M.
Inside the transfer portal, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire on SportsGrid. Matt Lutovsky joins us from Sporting News as we preview tonight's game with the Pacers and Knicks. But first, let's recap last night's 2 games. Matt, they promised me after the first round, the second round would be competitive. There would be teams, close games. We didn't get that last night. I mean, I certainly don't think that the Cavs are going to give Boston trouble. But I guess for me, we could start here. I was a little surprised that Dallas just got handed to by Oklahoma City last night. How about you?
Yeah, it definitely was too. It was a decent game for about 2.5 quarters or so, and then the Thunder just wore them down and took over. But I think you're right about the Boston Cavs series, where you kind of don't know what to expect from game to game. But with Dallas OKC, you certainly expect closer games. And I don't think Luka and Kyrie are going to have as mediocre to bad games as they had. And that's kind of how Dallas goes. As those two go, so goes the Mavericks. and they both had pretty slow games. I think you credit a lot of that to the Thunder defense. It was one of the best defenses in the league all year. So that part isn't necessarily a surprise, but you still expect those guys to get their shots up and to get their points. And with Luka specifically, you look at it now, he hasn't been shooting well virtually all playoffs, specifically from deep. And, he's a little dinged up. He's got a little something going on with his knee, his calf. So you wonder, is that bothering him, or is it just, hey, another cold night that was sort of fueled by a really good defense, or is there something more to it? Either way, they need to figure it out in a hurry, because even on the road, if you go down 2-0, you certainly feel like you're in a big hole, and you feel a little bit desperate going back home for game 3. So, even if they don't win their next game, they need to have a good showing, I think, just to inspire some confidence in the rest of their team and in their fans. I don't think Kyrie and Luka are ever going to lack for confidence, but very tough showing. Credit OKC. We know what they do. They play together. They play great defensively. They have a superstar on the other end. He's going to finish second or third tonight in the MVP voting for a reason. And you can tell they just got something going on down there. And they're another one of the big surprises here of this postseason. They really shouldn't be, but I think to the casual fan, they are a little bit, even though they're the 1 seed.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, the point spreads are adjusting in a lot of these series pretty quickly after these blowouts. Speaking of which, I mean, what's left to be said about the Boston Celtics? They are now minus money to win the NBA championship. We'll get to that in just a second, as they just throttle the Cavs 120-95. And sometimes, Matt, we were on the show yesterday talking about this, sometimes teams don't show up in game 1 like Boston, and then a close game is played, but the Cavs just looked spent in this one. And I guess that's what happens when you play another team in a 7-game series. Boston had all the rest. They had no rust. And they opened up as 11.5-point favorites on FanDuel. It went to 12.5. I'm seeing 13 for the next game, and maybe even higher by the time this game goes off. I mean, I guess we have to start asking ourselves the question, can the Cavs win a game in the series?
Yeah, it's always tough when you have those big lines in a playoff series, but I think you're right about the Cavs just looking worn out. They just doesn't seem like they have the horses. I think Boston is like, go ahead, Donovan Mitchell, you can get your points. We don't think there's anyone else on your team who can score, or at least score enough to keep up with us, even without Kristaps Porzingis. And if Derek White is going to keep doing a Steph Curry impression, I don't know how you beat Boston at that point, even with Porzingis hurt again. So, yeah, the Cavs just look like, they just don't have enough, just bottom line. And maybe if you go back home, you get your home crowd. That'll help give them some energy, get an extra day off. But right now, it just feels like, yeah, Boston's going to take care of business at home. Like I said, you start getting up into 13-plus point spreads. I don't know. That doesn't necessarily make me comfortable as a bettor. We saw the way Boston laid an egg last round in Game 2 against the Heat, who I think had even less horses than the Cavs have. I kind of wouldn't expect that to happen again. I think they had a little wake-up call from that. So I certainly like Boston in 4 or 5. Are they going to win every game by this many? That seems like a stretch. Feels like there's going to be a couple close games in there. These teams are professionals. They have pride. But Boston just looks great. And I think they're the favorite to win it all for a reason right now.
Yeah, no, they will. And I think, you could see a scenario where Indiana or New York beat Boston a couple times in the series. It's just so hard right now to envision them not getting to the finals. And then who knows? Anything can happen. We've seen that before, Matt. But before we get there, let's focus on tonight's game. Knicks against the Pacers. Knicks came back to win. It has just been the Brunson show. 4.5-point favorites tonight with a total of 220. So this total's actually moved up 3 points since game 1 because both teams had their way offensively. What is your expectation for tonight's game?
Yeah, I think it'll be another good game. It kind of comes down to Tyrese Halliburton. How healthy is he? How much can he give the Pacers? Because you look back even at their regular season matchups to get between these two teams, and Jalen Brunson, they couldn't stop Jalen Brunson then. Scored 39 in one, scored 40 in another, had 28 in the third game. So in the way he's playing right now, it just feels like, yeah, Jalen Brunson's going to get his 35 plus. So you have to figure out how can we slow down these other guys, DiVincenzo, Hart, etc. And with the way the Pacers play defense or don't play defense, depending how you look at it, it's going to be tough. They got to run them, and they just got to score, and they got to wear them down because the Knicks play only a handful of guys, big minutes. And if the Pacers aren't at full strength, particularly their engine in Tyrese Halliburton, it's going to be really tough for them, especially with that crowd in MSG. So I think it's going to be another good game. It's tough to pick the Pacers right now on the road, but they've surprised us in the past, and I think it's going to be a really good game. So I'm really looking forward to that one tonight.
All right, let's look at the odds to win the NBA championship. Matt, quick before we go. And Boston's clearly the favorite. If I told you could not take Boston and you had to take someone else, anyone on the list, I will not force you to take Cleveland. But beyond that, who do you think that you would take a shot at here?
Yeah, I think it's Minnesota, and that's no disrespect to Oklahoma City or any other team. I mean, Oklahoma City, again, they're the one seed for a reason. I just think Minnesota's in a great spot right now. They're playing so well. And it's funny, Boston's such a heavy favorite. If you listen to basketball podcasts, which I do a lot, they're talking about this as if Minnesota's the favorite. So there is a disconnect, I feel, between what Vegas is saying and maybe what the general public thinks and what the so-called quote-unquote experts are thinking. But it's the NBA playoffs. That can change from night to night. We see a team look good, and then we see another team look good the next night, and now they're the favorite.
Yeah, that's the way it works in the daily saga of the NBA. Thanks, Matt, for coming on.
I thank you.
We'll be right back.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Drysdale could easily, at plus money, get the first goal, the second goal, the fourth goal. There's a few guys here. Maybe the prop betting market is not a bad way to look here.
Clippers over the Mavericks. If I would have told you that score before the game, knowing that Kawhi Leonard wasn't playing, I would have really figured it would have been the other way around. But the NBA is just crazy.
In-game live, all access, only on SportsGrid.
A surprise winner on the PGA Tour. Taylor Pendrith ends up winning his first PGA Tour win.
He was pretty darn lucky to win. Ben Coles should have won that tournament. Also seeking his first PGA Tour victory, he went into the 18th hole, the easiest hole on the golf course, with a one-shot lead, and he was there in two, just less than 30 feet from the cup.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
I just don't want to play for clicks. I want to be involved with a great leading program that's going to develop players. Him leaving Colorado, a shot across the bow at Dion. I don't think Dion cares.
We saw Logan Diggs move on from LSU to Ole Miss with Lane Kiffin. Don't be shocked if you see John Emery potentially maybe at another school, maybe like a Miss State or even maybe like a Texas A&M.
Inside the transfer portal, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Time now for the SportsGrid Sound Off as we go around the world and hear from some of your favorite players in the NBA, the NHL, Major League Baseball, also some of your favorite contributors here on SportsGrid. Let's start with maybe one of your favorite players, especially if you are a Cleveland Cavaliers fan, although not a lot to be a fan of, especially if you consider the results last night, as the Cleveland Cavaliers did not really inspire any confidence that they can even make this a series with the Boston Celtics. But again, let's not overreact. It just was game one of the series. Now, naturally, the Boston Celtics are favored on the FanDuel Sportsbook to win the NBA championship for a reason, and the reason is they've been the most dominant team on offense and even on defense all season long. So, what can the Cavs cook up right now to get themselves over 100 points and even stay competitive in this series with the Celtics? Cavaliers' Donovan Mitchell says not overreacting to one loss is a good start.
I trust my guys. You know what I mean? That's kind of that's how I've always been. And, it's one thing where we got to continue to run our offense. And like I said, it's one game and we'll be better at it. I think it sucks that we lost, but it's good to kind of see where we can improve at. You know what I mean? So, not upset we lost, but not overreacting. It's like, okay, this is what happens. This is how we can improve. This is how we can get our looks. So I'm not one to typically overreact and feel like, damn, you know what I mean? I trust our guys, and we got guys that can really make plays. And so now it's like, all right, it's a different series, different group, different ways to score, different things. Isaac's being guarded by the 5 men. So different things we can learn, watch the film, and be like, all right, how do we attack in these scenarios, and we'll be better.
Sounds like a lot of film study for Mitchell and the Cleveland Cavaliers tonight before they have to play Boston yet again. And again, losing by 25 points, 30 points can get washed if Cleveland ends up beating Boston in Game 2. It's like we never will even remember that this happened in Game 1. But for now, just not an inspiring performance for the Cavaliers, although they did play great. Give them credit against the Orlando Magic. All right, folks, believe it or not, we are about 3 months away from the college football season. We are closing in on it. The summer's almost here, and late August, September is when college football begins, and the landscape is completely different. And you're going to need a lot of time to catch up on which team is in which conference and the playoffs and who's playing who. It is going to be insane. But don't worry, here at SportsGrid, we have you covered. And wouldn't you know, if we're going to talk about some college football and talk about the new look conference, one of them is going to be the Big Ten. Yes, somehow Oregon landed in the Big Ten this offseason, which means a lot of traveling back and forth. And potentially they have the second best price to win the Big Ten behind Ohio State. But with all the traveling they're going to have to do and this new conference, do they actually have a shot to win the Big Ten? Here's Ben Stevens.
Can Oregon football actually win the Big Ten in its first year in the conference in 2024? Oregon enters the 2024 college football season with the second best price to win the Big Ten, only behind Ohio State. The Ducks and the Buckeyes, the only two teams in the league that have a win total of 10.5 in double digits entering 2024, and the offseason has been awesome for Dan Lanning in Eugene. The second best portal class in the country in 2024, featuring most notably a new quarterback from Oklahoma to Oregon, Dylan Gabriel, and a couple of huge additions on the defensive side of the football as well. Oregon is going to challenge Ohio State in the Big Ten Conference in 2024. Craig, back to you.
Dylan Gabriel will challenge another team. I think this is like his fourth team already in college football, if I'm not mistaken. All right, money does drive the needle. That's why college football is changing the way that it is. Could we potentially see the same thing happen in the broadcast industry in the NBA when the contract is up with Turner Sports? Where could the NBA head? Here's the sports professor, Rick Horrow, with some answers.
Sports professor Rick Horrow, inside the $1.3 trillion business of sports. Daily numbers game, evolved NBA deal after next year. What's the real number? Could be $76 billion. They're saying that Amazon may be worth $1.8 billion and Disney $2.6 billion. The wild card is the NBC Comcast deal real at $2.5 billion. You add them all up, it's serious money. Couple of issues. The Barkley Inside the NBA, the show everybody says is irreplaceable. Does it end up on one of those networks, and if so, where? The Amazon deal may be all in for Friday night, maybe Thursday night of wall-to-wall prime streaming TV with local RSNs doing the production. That's a possibility. Then the other issue, when does this all start? Are the rights fees too high? They're never too high when you discuss regular NBA, NFL, Major League Baseball, NHL TV negotiations. This just proves it.
Thanks very much, Rick. We'll check back with the sports professor next week. Coming up next here on the show, we've got Pat Evans.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Drysdale could easily, at plus money, get the first goal, the second goal, the fourth goal. There's a few guys here. Maybe the prop betting market is not a bad way to look here.
Clippers over the Mavericks. If I would have told you that score before the game, knowing that Kawhi Leonard wasn't playing, I would have really figured it would have been the other way around. But the NBA is just crazy.
In-game live, all access, only on SportsGrid.
A surprise winner on the PGA Tour. Taylor Pendrith ends up winning his first PGA Tour win.
He was pretty darn lucky to win. Ben Coles should have won that tournament. Also seeking his first PGA Tour victory, he went into the 18th hole, the easiest hole on the golf course, with a one-shot lead, and he was there in two, just less than 30 feet from the cup.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
I just don't want to play for clicks. I want to be involved with a great leading program that's going to develop players. Him leaving Colorado, a shot across the bow at Dion. I don't think Dion cares.
We saw Logan Diggs move on from LSU to Ole Miss with Lane Kiffin. Don't be shocked if you see John Emery potentially maybe at another school, maybe like a Miss State or even maybe like a Texas A&M.
Inside the transfer portal, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. We got Pat Evans today in the house from Legal Sports Report. We're going to dive into some key stories surrounding sports betting. One I think is interesting for a lot of people who have ever been to the place called the entertainment facility called Dave & Buster's. And there's some interesting stories surrounding sports betting and Dave & Buster's. We'll get to that in a second. I don't want to ruin the story. Pat is with us here. Pat, great to have you back here. We're going to start off today. Let's dive right in. Casino discussions in Arkansas. I know we don't focus on the state all that often, so tell us more. What is sort of at stake here, and when did the legislature get to vote on the possibilities?
So actually, the legislature won't have to vote on this. So it's to your point, we don't talk about Arkansas very much. It legalized sports betting a few years ago, and it's alive, but it's only got 3 local operators, including Bet Saracen, which is it's a local operator. That's all there is to it. The reason for that is they have a 51% requirement for big operators to share the revenue with the local casinos. So that's kept everybody like DraftKings and FanDuel out because they're like, well, we want to keep our money, and that's not okay for them. So it's a very small market, all local operators, and Saracen, this resort down there, has sent a letter to the gaming commissioners in the state saying, hey, you know what? We want to start talking about online casino because we've seen an influx of illegal operators or gray market operators, however they are going to be described, that are offering casino games. So can we just go ahead and offer this? And according to the chief marketing officer at Saracen, really all it is a really quick kind of rewording of a few things in the regulatory language, and boom, they can offer it. So this could be a huge kind of movement in the iCasino world because, as we've talked about a couple times on the show this year, there were some bills to legalize online casino, and there just was no appetite this legislative session for those bills. We're only at about 6 or 7 states that have online casinos. And so it's a much slower adoption than we've seen with sports betting. And Arkansas could be this, kind of push it over the edge. Maybe as more and more states do it, more other states will say, hey, look, they did it. Let's move on. And again, because of the same kind of tax share revenue or revenue sharing model they have there, it'll be these small market operators, which is kind of different and kind of nice to see. We talk so much about FanDuel and DraftKings. It's kind of fun to see these small operators do something the CMO of Saracen, said online sports betting is number 2 behind slots for them, which is kind of crazy to think about when you're comparing that to the Las Vegas casinos and stuff, where table games is still a big deal. So a small movement. There's no kind of time frame on this because there is an extra casino license in Arkansas that the gaming commission's trying to sort out. And the CMO of Saracen, who sent this letter and said, let's get talking about this, said it's going to be on their timeline. We don't want to jump in front of anything. We let them get that sorted out. Then we can discuss this. But this is a huge deal because of the gray market and illegal operators that are taking up a lot of sport gambling money online.
Yeah, no, and I think that Arkansas is just one of those states that's interesting because as the South progresses with more states going legal, they can take a cue from Kentucky, Arkansas, and some of these others as well. Okay, well, Pat, I've got a new bill in sports wagering as it related to. I didn't ever think we'd be bringing this one to the show. I'm going to tell you what it's called. You're going to tell me what it is. Family Amusement Wagering Prohibition Act. Never thought that would be something I would be bringing to the show. I mean, this story is crazy. Like I mentioned it earlier in the program, you want to go out, you want to have a good time, you want to go to your local Dave & Buster's. Now, if you want to bet on people at Dave & Buster's, there's a possibility of doing that. And all of a sudden, this is raising significant eyebrows, I think, all across the country. What do you think comes of this whole thing?
Yeah, so if you missed it last week, Dave & Buster's rolled out or said they're going to roll out a program where you can wager with people, that you're competing against in games like Pop-A-Shot and Skee Ball and what have you. They've partnered with a company called Lucra, which has a couple of these partnerships across the country and with different organizations to kind of gamify different things. And it raised a lot of eyebrows. We haven't seen a ton of legislative action yet because a lot of legislators are kind of already winded down for the session. But in Illinois, we've got 3 weeks left, and the chairman of the House Gaming Committee came out and said, whoa. It was a day later and said, whoa, we got to figure this out. We got to stop this because this is kind of a strange area that we're wading into with this. Dave & Buster's and Lucra argue and claim that the game they are offering is a game of skill versus a game of chance. The representative in Illinois who has introduced this legislation that would ban wagering and advertising wagering at these family entertainment companies, Dave & Buster's, different competitors of theirs, says, you know what, even if it's a game of chance, you can play blackjack with more skill or less skill, and everybody agrees that's a game of chance. And then he goes on to describe, how he's playing Pop-A-Shot against somebody, and it takes him 15 seconds to get a ball, and the guy next to him's getting it over and over and over again in that 15 seconds. What regulations are in place to ensure these games are completely fair? So, he says until there's some sort of framework in place that says all 200 Dave & Buster's have everything, figured out and everything's fair and everything's streamlined and the same, these are games of chance effectively. And this is dangerous to kind of, and weird water to wade into in terms of the gambling world. So I would not be surprised if we don't see more of these bills coming from across the country to kind of either put really strict framework and regulatory language over this, or even completely outright ban it like we're seeing in Illinois. Who knows if they get it done in these 3 weeks and what happens after that. But again, this is something that lawmakers are probably going to take a really close look at, and regulators, just if they can do it in the language that's already existing to kind of, again, either completely outlaw it or put some frameworks into it to make sure it's completely fair and even. Because, you don't want to get into strange business operations there.
Yeah, you don't want any skee ball fixing. That's
Exactly.
not one thing I'm looking forward to. Just to make a small max bet, $10, $15. You'll never have a problem. That's all I want to hear. Okay, wow, a lot of sports bettors watching this may want to move to North Carolina, Pat, because if you live in North Carolina, you got one of the legislatures saying, hey, look, if you lose money, you can write that off on your tax return. Wouldn't that be fantastic?
Yeah, so it's actually Governor Roy Cooper who has come out and said, whoa, you can't deduct these in the state. We need to allow this. So there's yet a legislator to jump on board of this. You can, if you itemize your deductions federally, deduct your losses from your winnings. But for quite a few states, that's not actually the case. So in Illinois or in North Carolina, if you lose $500 and only make $100, you still have, or make $500 and lose $600, you still have to pay taxes on that $500. So the governor comes out, says we need to allow that the deductions from the winnings, and that's what we'll probably see a bill, I would imagine, come to address that and see where it goes from there. But I would, again, see a lot of states kind of taking a look at this if they don't already offer it. Michigan, where I live, of course, has fixed it. So I can deduct losses here, but in a lot of states you cannot in your state level taxes.
All right. Well, Pat, great stuff as always. Thanks for coming on NewsWire. We'll catch up again next week.
Thanks, Craig.
All right. Coming up next, Simon Applebaum of the podcast Tomorrow Will Be Televised checks in on ratings at the Kentucky Derby, the roast of Tom Brady, and the changes over at NFL Network. We'll be right back.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Draisaitl could easily, at plus money, get the first goal, the second goal, the fourth goal. There's a few guys here. Maybe the prop betting market is not a bad way to look here.
Clippers over the Mavericks. If I would have told you that score before the game, knowing that Kawhi Leonard wasn't playing, I would have really figured it would have been the other way around. But the NBA is just crazy.
In-game live, all access, only on SportsGrid.
A surprise winner on the PGA Tour. Taylor Pendrith ends up winning his first PGA Tour win.
He was pretty darn lucky to win. Ben Coles should have won that tournament. Also seeking his first PGA Tour victory, he went into the 18th hole, the easiest hole on the golf course, with a one-shot lead, and he was there in two, just less than 30 feet from the cup.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
I just don't want to play for clicks. I want to be involved with a great leading program that's going to develop players. Him leaving Colorado, a shot across the bow at Deion. I don't think Deion cares.
We saw Logan Diggs move on from LSU to Ole Miss with Lane Kiffin. Don't be shocked if you see John Emery potentially maybe at another school, maybe like a Miss State or even maybe like a Texas A&M.
Inside the transfer portal, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire. Lots happening in sports broadcasting. We take a weekly check with our friend Simon Applebaum. His podcast, Tomorrow Will Be Televised, is on Blog Talk Radio, and that's where he discusses all of that. In addition, he discusses it with us. He joins us now here in our studios. Great to have you back here, Simon. We have a lot to dive into on the show today, don't we?
We certainly do, Craig. When we'll be back with you on a Wednesday. Let's get right to it.
All right, so let's get started with the Kentucky Derby, the event that, of course, went off Saturday, a big underdog coming through. Lots of lead up to this. Some of the programming before actually gets watched sometimes more than the actual race because it's only 2 minutes. What did the ratings show this past weekend?
Very big news, Craig, for NBC. 16 million people watched on NBC, about 714,000 on Peacock. it was for NBC the best viewed, most viewed Kentucky Derby presentation since 1989 on broadcast television. The Peacock audience more than double a year ago. The total audience was up 13% from last year. And on top of that, before the race on Saturday, NBC got more good news from Churchill Downs because they're going to be televising the race until 2032 under a brand new extension of their current contract, which started, believe it or not, in 2001. So a great result overall. Part of the reason why the 20-horse field, one of the most incredible photo finishes in any Triple Crown race in recent memory. Great coverage overall. Bottom line, tremendous result for NBC and Peacock.
All right, so if there's a big result for Peacock, there's a huge result for Netflix. Simon, in so many different ways, the roast with Tom Brady is an epic success, and so much now being discussed as to how Netflix is going to capitalize on the next edition of this. Talking about an event that they decided to do, whoever's in charge of this one, Simon, is probably in line for a big raise, I would guess.
You better believe it, Craig, and epic is the word. For Sunday night alone, the live presentation, over 2 million people watching, and I'm sure many millions more have seen it since. This was a great coup by Netflix to combine sports entertainment with a format, the celebrity roast, that hasn't been seen in decades. Way back when Dean Martin had his long-running NBC variety show in the mid-60s to the mid-70s, during the 70s, he would have the last half of the hour devoted to a celebrity roast, along the lines of the famous Friars Club roast here in New York. They were so good that when Dean's variety show left NBC, he kept going with celebrity roast specials that were widely viewed. So this is the first time in a long, long while that we've seen a celebrity roast, not to mention one that was live and uncensored, and it could not have gone any better. Nikki Glazer, Jeffrey Ross were super Toastmasters. The show got a lot of buzz for what was said and also what was unsaid, and Netflix, let's face it, is on a major roll with live sports programming. This was part of the Netflix's Joke Festival, which included the John Mulaney live late primetime talk show for several nights straight. You also had 2 live stand-up comedy specials, one with Cat Williams, which had 4 million people watching on opening night. So Netflix realizes that live programming is their super new sweet spot, whether it's sports-related or not. And you better believe that when Netflix has their upfront event next week here in New York, this is going to be a major highlight. Ted Sarandos and Greg Peters, the co-chief executive officer of Netflix, took up from Reed Hastings more than a year ago. They have said on numerous conference calls, live programming is the new forte, and you're going to see more. I believe you will see more celebrity roasts for sure, both with sports stars and with entertainment stars.
All right, so that's the future, I think, for Netflix, and I think another one of those roasts is coming. I guess as we move on, you mentioned the upfronts are coming. We got a little hint, I think, at some news this week of the possibility of ESPN now showing up on the Disney app, which was not something that I could have predicted. What do you think else is coming this coming week, Simon, with these upfronts?
Well, here's a bit of news. Disney Plus is going to get into live sports simulcast. Now, Disney Plus has been doing the animated NFL and Big City Greens hockey presentations for the last year and a half, simulcast with Disney Channel, Disney XD, and others. But starting Tuesday night, when Caitlin Clark does her WNBA opening regular season game, that will be carried live on ESPN2 and ESPN+, Disney Plus is going to carry it live. And yesterday, when Disney reported their quarterly earnings in the morning, not the afternoon, where they usually do the morning, Bob Iger on the conference call said, we are going to put more live sports events on Disney Plus, either exclusively or on simulcast. And Disney, by the way, next Tuesday has their upfront event, and I think we're going to hear a lot more about what is going to be done, not only with Disney Plus in sports, but ESPN, both the mega content ESPN coming next fall, whether ESPN Plus has a future when that happens, whether sports betting is going to become, on the TV sets, can become part of this mega content ESPN, and also we'll get to this hopefully in a moment, the mega sports channel venture that Disney, Fox, and Warner Bros. Discovery are involved with.
Yeah, and I think the mega channel is interesting too. We have 2 minutes to go here, Simon. So I'm curious, in your opinion, maybe more than anything else, what's going on at NFL Network? It seems like they're making a lot of changes. Is it financially based? Are they not getting people watching? I saw they're moving their morning show from New York to California. They're dropping some analysts. They're dropping some shows as well. Is it just that people consume it differently? Is that what's going on here?
I think NFL Network is in financial trouble, and part of it is because of the fact that the cable subscriptions have been going down for the last year. People are turning off cable. They're putting on smart TV sets and smart devices in place. So NFL Network is making a lot of changes. NFL Total Access, their flagship show, gone. Michael Irvin, their key NFL analyst, gone. Good Morning Football has been off the air. They're trying to get it back on this summer. It may go on rather than NFL Network as a syndicated show to broadcast and maybe other cable networks or maybe content services as well. Bottom line is NFL Network is in big trouble. And don't forget, you're now seeing NFL channels pop up separate from NFL Network on smart TV sets and devices. So bottom line, NFL Network has to come clean soon. If not, I think this network may be done for.
Wow. Simon, any parting shots here before we go? I know we didn't get a chance to cover everything.
Keep your eye on the upfronts next week, especially Fox, Disney, and Warner Bros. Discovery, not only about the Mega Sports Channel service, but Warner Bros. Discovery and Amazon, where they stand with the NBA rights that are now for the next 11 years that are now in negotiation.
All right. Great stuff, Simon. We'll catch up again after the upfronts next week. Thanks for coming on.
You're welcome, Craig. Take care. Super rest of the week.
All right. Simon Applebaum of the podcast tomorrow will be televised. Coming up next, a couple of stories to end the show, including a former baseball player that's headed back to college. In addition, a trophy or award that's been missing for many years is on the auction block. We'll tell you all about that and a whole lot more as we continue here on NewsWire. This is SportsGrid. We will come back and wrap up our show after these messages.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Draisaitl could easily, at plus money, get the first goal, the second goal, the fourth goal. There's a few guys here. Maybe the prop betting market is not a bad way to look here. Clippers over the Mavericks. If I would have told you that score before the game, knowing that Kawhi Leonard wasn't playing, I would have really figured it would have been the other way around. But the NBA is just crazy.
In-game live, all access, only on SportsGrid.
A surprise winner on the PGA Tour. Taylor Pendrith ends up winning his first PGA Tour win.
He was pretty darn lucky to win. Ben Poles should have won that tournament. Also seeking his first PGA Tour victory, he went into the 18th hole, the easiest hole on the golf course, with a one-shot lead, and he was there in two, just less than 30 feet from the cup.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
I just don't want to play for clicks. I want to be involved with a great leading program that's going to develop players. Him leaving Colorado, a shot across the bow at Dion. I don't think Dion cares.
We saw Logan Diggs move on from LSU to Ole Miss with Lane Kiffin. Don't be shocked if you see John Emery potentially maybe at another school, maybe like a Miss State or even maybe like a Texas A&M.
Inside the transfer portal, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. I got to say, this story caught me by surprise yesterday when I saw it. There is a player who played Major League Baseball for several years, who actually was involved in a very big baseball trade several years ago. His name is Monte Harrison. Harrison was one of four players sent to Miami from Milwaukee for the trade that sent Christian Yelich to the Brewers. And, of course, Yelich went on to win the MVP of the National League. Now, Harrison went to Miami and was sort of up and down in the minor leagues, never really performed at any level. He was a key piece in the trade, and he certainly didn't work out. But he was a football player also back in 2014. He's a fantastic athlete. Didn't make it in baseball, so he's decided to hang him up and now go play football. This is true. Pushing 30 years old, Harrison has eligibility. So he has committed to play football as, I'm guessing, a wide receiver at the University of Arkansas this upcoming season. Now, naturally, he'd be the oldest player, I believe, in all of college football next season. But look, this is, something that you certainly can do in this day and age of where we're at in college football. Now, whether or not he has any success still remains to be seen. He batted $170 in several years with Miami. And kind of funny story here is former manager Don Mattingly once compared him to Mookie Betts in Major League Baseball. That was not a good comparison, Donnie. You did not get that one right. Needless to say, hopefully a better comparison in college football. And look, I really do like Monte, so I will be rooting for him and see if he succeeds now in college football. Okay, now, if you've ever had one of those things in your house that you knew you had, but you just can't find for years and years and years, imagine losing the biggest trophy you've ever had in the history of playing sports. And in this case, it's Diego Maradona, one of the best soccer players of all time. His Golden Ball trophy was lost for decades. And now, all of a sudden, it has been found. And instead of him keeping it somehow from the 1986 World Cup, it's going to be auctioned off in Paris. That is correct. Now, he died in 2020 at 60 years old. So this thing has basically been sitting somewhere and hasn't been found. He scored that controversial, I don't know if you remember this, the Hand of God goal. It was called the goal of the century over England in the quarterfinals. Maybe some of you don't remember this, but I would guess that this is going to go to somebody in Argentina, maybe, where he played, for millions of dollars. That would be my guess. So they found it. It will be auctioned off in Paris. And there's an auction house, Agutz, Aguttes is the name of the auction house, in case you got a couple of million to spend. Diego Maradona's Golden Ball trophy will be auctioned off. Now, a groundbreaking morning today for the PGA Tour, as they made a huge announcement that's going to set the precedent, I think, for not just the PGA Tour, but also, of course, Live Golf, who's been dabbling in this as well, as they have named a new sponsor and an official sports book to the PGA Tour's event, the PGA Championship, one of the big majors. Here we go. It is ESPN Bet. They're diving into the advertising here. They've announced it through 2026. The agreement is with the PGA of America and Penn Entertainment, multi-year sports betting partnership. Now, under the agreement, ESPN Bet is now the official sports betting sponsor of the PGA Championship through 2026. The upcoming PGA Championship is going to be Louisville, Kentucky, May 16th through May 19th. That is next weekend. And it's the first time ever that a men's golf major has been established with an official sports betting sponsor. So we'll see if this ends up working for Penn and for the PGA Tour as well. But in this day and age of sports betting becoming legal, and by the way, a huge appetite for betting on golf, we bring in Brady Cannon every week, it does make a lot of sense. Now, whether the advertising works for ESPN Bet and Penn, that, of course, remains to be seen. All right, thanks to all our guests for coming on the program today. On our show today, we had Matt Lutovsky from Sporting News. In addition, we had our friend Simon Applebaum from the podcast Tomorrow Will Be Televised, and Pat Evans from Legal Sports Report. Our associate producer, Frank, our producer, Michael Cohen, and I'm Craig Mish. Let me set you up for the rest of the week here on NewsWire. Coming up tomorrow morning here on the show, 11 a.m. Eastern, we're going to preview the games in the NBA, the games in the NHL, everything happening in baseball and hockey as well. So make sure you stay tuned to that. Each and every day after our show is over, including coming up, we've got the early line at 11 a.m. Eastern. That's followed by Pharrell Coast to Coast at 3 o'clock Eastern. So for those of you who are getting ready for all of the games, we got you covered there. Now, on tomorrow's program, and maybe even Friday as well, we're going to get a huge preview of the National Hockey League. Joe Madden's going to join us because we've got some great – for all of what you could say about the NBA's games, the hockey games have been incredible. I don't know if you caught the game last night, overtime for Carolina and New York Rangers. It has been fun to watch. So I'll see you tomorrow morning, 11 a.m. Eastern, for our next edition of NewsWire. Hope you have a great rest of your Wednesday. See you tomorrow on our Thursday edition. Have a great one.